The surgical suite doors were locked tight. The Special Forces operator on the table had been officially pronounced deceased, but his K-9 partner refused to move. For 6 straight hours, the dog held his position, muscles tense, eyes burning with focus. Anyone who approached received the same warning. Lips curled, teeth exposed, a low growl that sent a chill through the room. This wasn't panic. This was loyalty. When staff attempted to move the body, the K-9 surged forward. Security stormed in, weapons drawn, voices shouting commands. "He's gone." Someone insisted. But the dog positioned himself between his handler and the exit as if he sensed something no one else did. That's when she entered. A young nurse named Emily Carter. Blonde hair, soft voice, no authority, no rank. She didn't raise her voice, didn't reach for the dog. She knelt beside the operator and slowly removed her glove. On her hand was a faded tattoo, a blade symbol, marked with the number 7. The K-9 froze. Instantly. Then he sat, lowered his head, pressed it against his handler's chest. Outside, a black government SUV slammed to a halt. A special operations commander stepped out, coffee in hand. Then he looked through the window and saw her. The cup slipped from his grip and shattered on the pavement. His face drained of color. Want to know what happens next and who she really is? Stay until the end. Before we continue, take 2 seconds to comment and subscribe. These true medical stories only survive because people like you stay with them to the final moment. The operating room doors remained sealed, red warning lights glowing overhead like a signal no one wanted to acknowledge. Inside, the elite operator lay motionless, skin cooling, chest still. The heart monitor showed a flat, relentless line, confirmed by 2 surgeons and a senior anesthesiologist. Time of death had been recorded. Dictation had begun. Gloves were coming off, yet no one could approach the table. Beside it sat the military K-9, not pacing, not lying down, sitting upright, back straight, muscles locked, eyes fixed forward like a sentry guarding an invisible threshold. His leash lay untouched on the floor, slack, as if even gravity understood not to interfere. The first nurse who tried to step closer barely made it 3 feet. The dog's head snapped up. Teeth flashed. A deep warning growl vibrated through the sterile room. Controlled, precise, trained. She froze and slowly retreated. Someone whispered, "He's confused." The dog responded with a single explosive bark, sharp enough to echo like a gunshot. 6 hours passed. 6 hours of phone calls, heated discussions, and administrators quoting protocols they had never applied to a military working dog protecting a fallen operator. The K-9 never ate, never drank, never shifted. Every time someone entered arm's reach, the dog rose instantly, muscles coiled, teeth visible. When surgeons finally attempted to roll the table toward the exit, the dog lunged. 2 security officers rushed in, both trained, both confident. Neither stopped him. One slammed into the wall, breath knocked from his chest. The other dropped, clutching his arm as blood seeped between his fingers. The room erupted. Doctors backed away. Nurses pressed against counters. Someone shouted, "Call the police! Get that dog out of here! We can't leave a body unattended!" The K-9 planted himself between his handler and the door. He wasn't guarding a body. He was standing watch. Then the order came down from administration, quiet, cold, final. If the dog couldn't be removed, he would be neutralized. A security supervisor raised his weapon, hands shaking despite years of experience. No one wanted to do it. But policy didn't recognize loyalty, instinct, or grief. That's when the door opened again. The rookie nurse stepped inside. Emily Carter. She didn't belong there, and everyone could see it. Oversized scrubs. Hair tied back simply. Badge clipped crooked, the way new staff always did before they learned the unspoken rules. She was usually assigned to vitals and paperwork, the kind of nurse people barely noticed. She didn't look at the weapon, didn't shout, didn't even look at the dog. She walked past security as if they weren't there. "Miss, get back," someone whispered urgently. She didn't. The K-9 turned toward her, teeth bared, body surging forward in a blur of muscle. And then he stopped. Not slowly, not cautiously, instantly. She knelt beside the operator. Close enough that the room seemed to stop breathing. She removed her glove. On the back of her hand, faded but unmistakable, was a tattoo few would recognize. A dagger. Beneath it, the number 7, the dog's posture changed completely. Ears lowered, breathing slowed, he sat. Then carefully, he lowered his head and pressed it gently against his handler's side. The room went silent, not the silence of confusion. The silence of people realizing they had been wrong about everything. One surgeon whispered, "What? What does that mean?" Emily didn't answer. She wasn't watching them. She was watching the monitor, what everyone else had dismissed as electrical interference. A faint flicker. A signal no one wanted to believe. She studied it longer than anyone else had dared to. Then she leaned in, eyes narrowing, not with hope, but with intent. Outside the hospital, a black armored SUV slowed to a halt. Then another. Then another. Engines cut nearly in sync. A special operations commander stepped out, coffee still in his grip, jacket loose, jaw set with urgency. He had been briefed on the K-9, on the delay, on the issue inside the OR. What he was not prepared for was what greeted him when the doors opened. The dog sitting rigid, the operator still on the table, and a woman kneeling beside him, glove removed. The commander stopped mid-step. The coffee slipped from his hand. It shattered on the floor. Dark liquid spreading across the tile. No one spoke. He didn't look at the dog, didn't ask about the body, didn't question the lockdown. His eyes were fixed on the tattoo and on the woman wearing it because he had seen that blade before. Somewhere no one acknowledged, in a unit without records. In a war that officially never existed. Behind him, security waited. Inside the OR, the nurse finally spoke. Not loud, not dramatic. "Give me 2 minutes," she said, "and don't touch him." A surgeon started to argue, then froze when he saw the commander's raised hand. The monitor flickered again. This time it didn't stop, and when the line twitched just enough to make one exhausted doctor inhale sharply, the K-9 lifted his head. Eyes locked on the nurse like he had been waiting for her. The commander stepped forward. And that was the moment everything they believed about the rookie nurse and the operator on the table began to fracture. The monitor didn't scream. It didn't flash alarms or spill warnings. It simply trembled. A faint, uneven pulse rippled across the flat line, so slight that 3 people missed it completely. One anesthesiologist noticed and shook his head, already writing it off as interference. Another surgeon turned away, reaching for the chart to confirm what was already recorded. But the nurse didn't move. She leaned closer, eyes locked on the screen, jaw tightening just a fraction, not hope, not fear, recognition. The dog raised his head at the same instant, not barking, not growling, watching. "I need suction," the nurse said quietly. The words cut through the room sharper than any shouted order. A junior resident hesitated, then looked toward the commander in the doorway. The commander said nothing. He nodded once. Suction was handed over. The nurse adjusted the operator's head by mere centimeters. A change so precise it appeared accidental to anyone who didn't know better. Her fingers pressed gently along his neck, counting silently. 2 seconds. 3. "There," she murmured. The pulse flickered again, stronger. One surgeon cursed under his breath and leaned in. "That's impossible." "He's been down too long." She didn't argue. She checked pupils, skin tone, temperature. Details most people stopped caring about after time of death. "He's not gone," she said. "He's locked." "Locked," another doctor snapped. "That's not a diagnosis. It is where he comes from." No one knew how to respond to that. The K-9 stood and moved closer to the table, body aligned with the operator's torso, ears forward, steady. "Ready?" The nurse reached for a syringe. A senior surgeon grabbed her wrist. "You are not authorized." She met his eyes for the first time. Something in her expression made him release his grip. Not fear, not rebellion, certainty. "This isn't a hospital issue," she said calmly. "It's a battlefield shutdown, trained, induced. He did it to survive." The room went silent. The commander stepped closer. Close enough that antiseptic mixed with the faint scent of coffee on his uniform. His gaze moved from the operator's face to the nurse's hands, then to the tattoo again. "SEAL Team 7, he said quietly. She didn't look at him. She injected. The monitor jumped once. Twice. A rough, shallow breath tore into the operator's chest like air scraping through broken glass. A sound half the room would never forget. One surgeon staggered back, hand over his mouth. "Oh my God." The K-9 whimpered softly, relieved, pressing his forehead against the table again, tail still, body trembling now that the watch was nearly over. The nurse adjusted the oxygen, checked the line. Her movements were precise, detached. "He'll crash again," she said, "when he comes out." As in. The anesthesiologist began. It meant he was about to relive the darkest moment of his life all at once. The unit captain shut his eyes for a second. He understood exactly what she was saying. From that point on, everything accelerated. Faster than policy. Faster than approvals. Commands were issued without hesitation. Gear showed up without questions. The operating bay shifted from stillness back into organized chaos. And through every second of it, the junior medic stayed close to the soldier's side, not leading, not giving orders, simply grounding him. At one point, a physician leaned in and whispered, "How do you even know what to do?" She didn't respond. Because some truths weren't meant to be explained to outsiders. They were meant to be carried or buried. As they worked to stabilize him, the soldier's body began to lock up. Muscles tightened, his jaw clenched. A low sound escaped him, not quite a breath, not quite a threat. The K-9 reacted instantly, posture rigid. "He's coming back wrong," the medic said quietly. "Clear the room." "Clear," a resident repeated. This time the captain snapped the order. People moved fast. The soldier's eyes flew open. They weren't seeing the operating room. They were seeing smoke, heat, motion in the dark. He thrashed, restraint straining as raw strength surged back. Monitors shrieked, heart rate spiking, pressure climbing. "Contact left," he rasped. "Get down." The dog barked once, not aggressive, but sharp and anchoring. The medic leaned in, placing a steady hand on the soldier's chest. Firm, unshaken. "You're not there," she said. "You're here, you're alive, you're safe, you're not alone." His breathing stuttered, sweat streamed down his face. "You hear the dog?" she continued. "That means you made it." His eyes shifted toward the K-9. Recognition flickered. The violent movement slowed. The moment broke like a wave finally reaching shore. The soldier sagged back onto the table, breathing rough but real. The room released a breath it didn't realize it was holding. A surgeon whispered. She just talked him back. The captain stepped closer, voice low. "You were officially declared dead." She finally met his eyes. "On paper," she said. A heavy silence settled between them, filled with things neither of them would ever say in that room. Outside the operating area, stories were already spreading. A soldier pronounced dead. A military dog refusing to leave his side. A junior medic doing things no junior medic should know how to do. Judgment followed quickly. She crossed lines. She got lucky. She broke rules. Inside, the medic washed her hands slowly, deliberately, blood spiraling into the drain. She didn't look up when another young nurse whispered, "They're saying you shouldn't have done that." She dried her hands and replied calmly, "They weren't there." Before she could step away, the captain asked, "Why are you here?" She thought for a moment. "Because hospitals are quieter than combat zones," she said. "And here people don't ask who you were, only what you can do." The K-9 finally lay down, resting for the first time since arriving. As orders slowly returned, the medic began to fade back into the background, allowing rank and hierarchy to reclaim the room. Before she could disappear, an older nurse gently caught her arm. "Hey," she said. "No matter what they say, you saved him." The medic nodded once. Then, for the first time all night, she hesitated. Down the hall, raised voices grew louder. Administrators. Officers. Questions that didn't want answers, only control. She knew the next phase wouldn't be about saving a life. It would be about who she really was, and whether that truth could stay buried. Before the door opened and consequences walked in, she glanced once more at the soldier on the table and the K-9 beside him. "If you believe the quiet ones are often the strongest," comment. Never judge. The questioning began before the blood on the floor had fully dried. Short sentences. Controlled voices, spoken just outside the operating room by people who carried authority like armor. Hospital leadership. Legal staff. Military liaisons who didn't need introductions. The junior medic heard every word without turning. She stood at the sink, washing her hands for the third time. Slow. Precise. Red water swirled away and disappeared. She kept her eyes on the stream, not out of fear, but because looking up meant engagement, and engagement meant exposure. Behind her, the unit captain spoke evenly. He was misdiagnosed. That's on us, not her. A sharp reply came back. She violated procedure. She saved his life. That's not the issue. The medic dried her hands and finally turned. The room fell into that strange silence that happens when someone unassuming becomes the center without trying. "Ma'am," one administrator began, forcing a professional smile. "We'll need a formal report," she said, giving a single nod. "I'll draft something?" "Not that kind," the officer replied. "We need to know how you knew exactly what to do." She held his gaze. "I've dealt with it before." "That's not an explanation. It's the only one you're getting." The K-9 shifted at the sound of her voice, lifting his head just enough for his ears to twitch in her direction before relaxing again. The operator lay unconscious now, stabilized, his chest rising and falling with mechanical help. "Alive, but barely holding," someone muttered. The captain studied the dog, then her. "You didn't just treat him," he said quietly, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You recognized him." "And he recognized you?" She didn't argue. "I was told you were dead," he added. "So was everyone else." "That was intentional, wasn't it?" She hesitated, only for a moment. "Yes," the captain leaned back, folding his arms. "They won't drop this." "I know." Across the room, 2 residents whispered. She didn't even blink when he came at her. "Did you see that? Like she's done it 1,000 times?" She heard them. It was more than that. The captain gestured toward the hallway. "Walk with me." She paused briefly, then followed through the swinging doors into the quieter corridor. The chaos dulled behind them, replaced by the steady drone of equipment and distant movement. He stopped near a window overlooking the ambulance bay. Black SUVs remained parked below. "Strike Group Echo," he said again, this time as a statement. She watched the light reflect off wet pavement. "That's what they called it. They told us your team was lost. They were, and you, I lived. You were their field medic." "Yes." The silence between them was heavy, crowded with things neither could say aloud. "They never used real names," he continued. "Just tags and designations." She nodded. "So if someone cracked," he said quietly, "there was nothing to give away, and if someone died, there was no name to grieve," she finished. Her jaw tightened. "That dog," the captain said, "he trained with your unit. He was conditioned for identifiers. Movement, posture, behavior markings. Even faded?" "Yes." He glanced at her hand. "You kept the ink. Not much left, but he noticed." "Yes." He turned fully toward her. "You know what happens if command finds out you're still breathing?" "I do. They'll want statements, reviews, full debrief. And they'll try to send me back." He didn't argue. They both knew it was true. Voices rose down the hall, someone demanding clearance, someone denying it. "Jurisdiction fight," he said. "Military versus hospital." She gave a dry half-smile. "They always fight over the body." He studied her. "Why are you really here?" She didn't answer right away. "Because this place is supposed to save people without asking who they are." "And yet," he said, "they already are." She nodded. Inside the trauma bay, the K-9 suddenly stood, ears locked forward, body rigid. She felt it before anyone spoke. "He's crashing," she said, already moving. They rushed in together. The monitors dipped sharply, blood pressure dropping, heart rhythm unstable. "He's bleeding internally," a surgeon shouted. "We missed something?" "No," she said. "It wasn't there before." She took position at his side, hands calm, eyes focused. A tremor ran through his frame. "Neurogenic shock," she said. "Delayed onset? That's not possible." "It is if he was trained to override it." The room shifted into motion, not rank. Instinct took over. She adjusted fluids, repositioned, called out medications before alarms demanded them. The K-9 paced once, then lay down again, eyes locked on the operator. "How do you know?" a doctor demanded. She didn't look up. "Because I've seen it happen in places where there were no machines to warn us." The captain felt the room subtly realign around her, leadership bending toward capability without anyone consciously noticing. A junior staff member murmured, "She's in control." And she was. The barrier held again, just barely. A collective breath moved through the space, but it didn't last. The doors swung open. 2 officers in crisp uniforms entered, expressions rigid, eyes scanning. One carried a thick dossier marked with crimson tags. "Which one of you is the medic?" the taller officer demanded. She rose slowly. "That would be me." His gaze swept over her, lingering on her hands. "You're not on our list." "I wasn't meant to be." He turned toward the captain. "Sir, we need her outside immediately." The captain didn't budge. "Sir," the officer insisted. "She stays," the captain said evenly. "This is a restricted operation." "So is she," the man replied, eyes narrowing. "Do you know who she is?" "Yes," the captain said, "and you do too." The silence pressed down on them. The medic held his stare without flinching. "If you pull me out now," she said, "he won't survive." A pause, then another. The man swore under his breath and stepped back. 5 minutes, he snapped. "That's it." She turned back to the table. 5 minutes was more time than she'd ever had overseas. Her movements were fast, exact, shaped by years of knowing how quickly seconds disappear. As she worked, she felt eyes on her, not only in the room, but from everything that had followed her in. The captain leaned in quietly. "They're reopening your record." "I know. Once they do, they'll remember who I used to be," she replied, "and who you still are." She didn't answer. The truth carried more weight than any insignia. When the barrier's reading steadied again, she finally stepped back, exhaustion crashing in now that adrenaline released its grip. The service dog stood and pressed his head briefly against her leg, just once, before returning to position. The officers with the folder moved aside, speaking softly into their radios. Outside, engines roared to life. The captain studied her, face unreadable. "This isn't finished," she met his eyes. "It never is." Down the corridor, footsteps came fast, too many, too deliberate. As the door opened again, the young medic understood the next fight wouldn't be in surgery. It would be in the truths she'd spent years trying to escape.